So today's video is going to be a few different things I'm finishing up on the bench. So we have the 66 Bandmaster. We've got the new grounded power cable, and the ground wire is longer than the hot and neutral. It is going to chassis right here. The neutral and the hot are going to the old connections on this courtesy outlet. The neutral and hot then go to different sides of the old ground switch, but the depth cap has been removed, so they're just placeholders. The neutral connection is tied to one side of the primary. The hot connection then goes to the inmost connection on the fuse holder, and the other part of the fuse holder goes to the power switch, and the other side of the power switch is the other primary. So that's modern safety code with a vintage amp. Here you can see I have lifted and bent over double and taped off the old heater center tap, filament center tap secondary, which was going here. And in its place, I have 200 ohm half-watt resistors going to ground right here. And the reason I do that is twofold. Number one, there can be heater shorts, especially with current production tubes, that can happen faster than a mains fuse can react. So it's much better for the safety of the power transformer to have two little half-watt resistors which will burn up than to have a center tap which stays connected. So if one of these burns from too much current, then the transformer becomes disconnected. It's safe from the short. The other reason is because I can really measure these resistors and get a good match. And you can get a better balance typically with resistors than you can with the actual winds on the transformer, because the winding is kind of imprecise. You may be within 2 to 5% if you're really lucky, whereas you can get exactly matched with resistors. And here, finishing it up, you can see the new Switchcraft Bright switch, because the old one was not working. The old one was a single pole, single throw. The new one is a double pole, double throw, but we're just using a single throw of it. And in this case, a single pole, because the wire, the lead on the old Bright cap was not enough to span both. When possible, I'll use both poles just to lessen the chance of one thing failing in a switch. After all that, it's sounding like it ought to. So without the Bright switch, with the Bright switch, or without the Bright switch with the treble raised. This is from 4 to 6. New strings on the SG, so got a little more stretching to do. On to the next thing for the bench. This is the return of that white Tele from that wiring video the other day, and while the wiring did make the mojo tones much nicer to play, the owner and I agreed that the Lawlers and the Murrays kind of killed them. In person, it's very apparent. Not everyone's going to hear that in the videos that I did, just because of playback systems. They vary, and you have to listen kind of loud. But to the player into the amp, it's pretty obvious. So he ordered a set of Lawler Special Ts and a set of Murrays after coming over and hearing all those guitars last week. The Murrays will be here in a while. The Lawlers are already here. So the Lawlers are going in this one. And he asked if I would shield it. So yeah, absolutely, I'll shield it. This is the third and potentially final coat of the StewMax shielding paint. And once it's dry this time tomorrow, I'll be able to see how much conductivity I have and what my next steps may be. I'll probably end up running some wires from this cavity to here and this cavity to here, because say that from this cavity to this cavity, there is conductivity just through the paint, but it may be 200 ohms, whereas the wire gets a lot closer. It's just the nature of conductive paint. It's not a good ground, but it's enough for good shielding typically. I'll know tomorrow once it's dry enough for me to measure with a meter. And the places here where it looks like I made a mistake, that's so when I put the foil on the back of the pick guard, it'll make contact with this, which will be at least at shield, if not all the way fully at ground. So the pick guard will shield the top parts of this stuff. On to the next thing. This is that 66 Super Reverb. Forgive the gangrene on my fingers. That's some shielding paint from the Tele. I didn't spill on the Tele, but I spilled on myself. Classic. Anyway, this is a 66 Super Reverb. You've been hearing this on some videos lately. And the last remaining issue this amp has is a dirty socket. Dirty/loose. If that tube would vibrate and make some noises, you can move it and get some noises, and that shouldn't be the case. It wasn't the tube. I'd already cleaned all the tube sockets, but this one just had a little bit of a wiggle, a little bit of intermittency, and it wasn't the tube. So with the amp powered off, I went in with a bit of an old wound D string and tried to work my way in there. And in a good connection, it's a little bit tight, but it'll go in and out, and you can kind of feel it burnishing things. And on some of them, it's really tight. I can't really see what I'm doing here with the camera in the way. But this one right here on this heater pin, that's what you want. But a lot of them were really loose, and I could not only put that in very easily, but kind of wiggle it around. So I took this dental pick. You can also use jewelry tools, a jeweler's tools, and get in there and just kind of move each one from the side just the slightest bit. So you're not trying to mash it massively. Just kind of move it from this side to the center and this side to the center just a little bit, and I got all of them tight. Now that should probably do it, but just in case, I'm going to give it one more flush with isopropyl. Also, you guys have asked how I clean tube sockets. 99% of the time, this is what I do. With the amp powered off with nothing stored in there, I'll squirt some isopropyl in there, and then I'll turn it upside down with a bit of wadded up paper towel in there. I'll just press that in there, and once I turn this upside down, it'll kind of all wick into this bit of paper towel, and then you just got to wait maybe 20 to 30 minutes for it to evaporate. While I wait for the isopropyl to evaporate on that 66 Super Reverb, I want to address some loose tolex on this Bandmaster head cab. Here's the worst of it. There's also some flaps towards the front that can prevent the chassis from sliding in. So if this was really bad, I'd do something elaborate. I'd get in here and kind of lightly sand all this stuff, because a lot of times they're really filthy. This is actually in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to dry brush it, both surfaces where everything needs to be reattached. And I'm not going to worry about right here because the glue I use will take care of that, including that little bit of dirt that is there. It's not all dirt, it's also all glue. So I'm going to take some Tight Bond 2. Doing a larger area, I'll wet it down, thin it out a little bit. But what I want to do is just get the glue, a light film of the glue on all the surfaces. It doesn't take a ton. But I do want to get all the corners. I also want to do the same thing to the wood. In fact, I'll use the wood as kind of a palette to get some glue to transfer it to the tolex. There are other ways to do this. If you prefer a different way, that's fine. It's not about arguing on the internet. This has always worked for me. This is not how I would apply tolex to a cab for the first time, but this is a great way I have found to do fairly easy, very reliable repairs like this with easy cleanup. Like there, I got a little bit on there. Before it sets, it's water soluble, so that'll wipe right off. Not an issue. So I just want to get glue a light film of this stuff on all those surfaces, including back where we can't see, but I know that tolex is going to wrap around to, using this part as the palette. Normally I would turn this around so I could see it better. I'm trying to let you guys see as much as possible. And the next trick is to be patient and wait a minute or two. All right, after a minute or two has passed, then I will slowly press it down. And it will take the form that I want. And it will hold that. The glue sticks to itself very well after it's gotten a little bit tacky. And if this were a thing like the front lip or the top lip where it's going to have things sliding on it again and again, and I'd worried about this not adhering tight enough, I would tape it up so that it would lay down flat and cannot possibly move while the glue dries. In this case, right here where I'd want to have tape, I also have this old tube chart. I want to preserve that. So I think this is going to do the job once it sets up. I'm going to get in there and do those flaps. You can see one little flap here. That's not a problem, but the two up towards the front are. I'm going to do those, and I will tape those so that they absolutely have to stay flat, and then I'll show you the after. So now while I'm waiting for the glue to dry on this Bandmaster cab and the isopropyl to fully evaporate on the baseman, I'm going to remove this paint on this hardware here, just because I can and it's bugging me. Remove the handle, just clean the whole area. So that paint will come off real easy now. I'm just using my thumbnail, which should not be enough to scratch this nickel plating. Not using a lot of pressure. And I'm gonna go get some warm water on a damp cloth first. And if I need to, I'll follow up with some naphtha. I'm not trying to make it the whole thing beautiful, but we can do something about that level of funk. Use this dry cloth. Clean these off to the bits of rubber there. All right, I don't think I'm going to need to do anything further. It's just nice to get that paint off and some of that dirt off in the process. I'm going to let this dry all the way, just evaporate some more before I put these back in place, just because they are metal and I did use some water there. But, you know, always go, whenever you're doing stuff like this, work with, an awareness of how abrasive the stuff you're using is. Like a thumbnail, much better than a screwdriver. Or water, much better than acetone, for instance. You know, water, spit, believe it or not, sometimes just moist breath, humid breath. Naphtha rarely hurts this stuff. Alcohol is good for a lot of things, isopropyl, some plastics that can dry out. You gotta be really careful with the acetones and the ammonias in the world. While I wait for all those things to dry and evaporate, etc., etc., this is a 72, I believe, deluxe reverb, belongs to Steve Selvage. I've done a lot of work on this over the years. As you can hear, it started having a rushing water noise. Now, it's most likely to be tubes, so I'm going to pull a tube at a time and see if it goes away. Let's pull V1. Tells me it's most likely to be a problem with the output tube. Well, that's cool. All right, well, I think I know what's going on to an extent. Master volume pot, I installed this not too long ago. As I turn it down, the noise gets louder. I think what's going on is that we have a bad output tube, and so it's not operating correctly. More evidence for that in just a moment. But as you turn it down, you're not getting common mode cancellation, so you're getting that noise. The other clue that it might be that is that he was saying the normal channel, the bass response was really off. It's possible that that bass being off was actually the behavior of the output tubes beginning to change. All right, got a pair of some JJ 6V6s in right now. 6V6S, not the new dual mica spacer. Let's see if the rushing water comes in. No, all those problems are gone. And I'm not saying this because I did the work and I'm perfect or anything, but I knew that it was very unlikely to be the work that I had just done not very long ago, 2-3 months ago. And sadly, it was all too likely to be the current production tubes. And I've really not had great luck with the Apex match tubes from C Distribution, tubesandmore.com, whatever we want to call it. You know, they seem to be nice people overall, and I love a lot of the things that CE sells, but I've just been running into too many issues. I've gone back to almost exclusively using Tube Depot, and now that the supply issues are better, the Tube Store. So now when we plug a guitar into the normal channel, I'm going to check the vibrato channel, which is pretty much stock Fender, and then check this one. This has got a band Axol that we put in. He wasn't using this channel at all, but he wanted something that could sound kind of funky and pawn shoppy tweedy. So without doing too many mods to the amp, I converted it to a band Axol. Just want to make sure that bass pot's working all right. Yeah, that channel's working perfectly. Let's try the modded channel where he said the bass pot was acting up. It's actually working quite well. You're not going to get a chance to really hear what this channel does in this video because it would clip the mic I'm using for the voice. I'll get Steve to take this for a spin on camera soon. But yeah, that bass response is very full. This channel's got more low end than this channel, but it happens a little bit later in the pot taper just because of the way this tone circuit works. It's really designed to work with overdrive, but I barely had this on because of clipping. But if the output tube was going south, one of the first signs of an output tube that's not conducting right is, if only one tube is working, you leave push-pull territory. You just get into all the way push or all the way pull or mostly push or mostly pull. And one of the first things that happens is the low end goes away and you often get a hum. And of course, as we just heard, rushing water as it gets really critical. So those tongue saws are going away. I'll order him a new pair of tubes, get them biased, put this back together, and maybe he can show you what this channel is supposed to sound like at a higher volume. I guess I could have turned the preamp up and the master down, but it's not the same with my bench mic, which is set for vocal levels. Not singing vocals, just talking at you. All right, this should finish up the 66 Super Reverb. That tube socket is clean. All the noise is gone when I try to move the tube. And I already know that the rest of the amp sounds great, so away it goes. And the tape is off of the bandmaster cabinet, and this is all glued up. It's not going anywhere. And those flaps are glued down so the chassis won't be interfered with. And it's time for me to put this together and finish this one up just like the Super Reverb. So it's been a good day, and tomorrow afternoon I'll be able to see where we're at with the continuity on that Tele. And in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed these various little tips and tricks as my day goes by. It's actually only part of the afternoon. I've got other stuff to do, but this was the stuff that I thought would make for a good video for everyone. So I hope you agree. Thanks for watching.